All right, I've got 2 o'clock, so we're going to start this rolling. So thank you, everybody, for coming out today. My name is Jay Bennett. I'm the Assistant Director of Executive Services for the Michigan Association of School Boards. I have been hired by your Board of Education to facilitate the search process. Today, we are hosting a virtual open house, an opportunity for you to ask questions of one of the candidates. Candidate at this time, 2 o'clock today, is Jessica Benavides. So Jessica, if you'd like to just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then we'll start with some questions. So go right ahead.
Certainly, thank you. First of all, thank you all for coming out, especially on a beautiful Michigan day that we have today, to spend some time with me. It's really wonderful to see all of you who are really invested in this process as we are choosing the next superintendent for the Lansing School District. It's an honor for me to be here today. Just a little bit about me. I started out as a teacher, 7th and 8th grade science, and moved into being an elementary teacher, principal, and I'm currently the executive director over improvement and innovation, which means that I oversee assessment, technology. I serve on the instructional team. I also manage all of our state and federal grants. So it's a dream job to be here today because I am a longtime Lansing resident. Actually, I'm a 4th generation Lansing resident. So this community means the world to me. And so does the Lansing School District. So it's an honor to be here today to mesh those things together. If I'm chosen as your superintendent, please know that those are 2 of my passions, the Lansing School District and the Lansing community. I'm excited to hear the questions that you have today. I heard from Jay before we came on that we have some students that have written in to ask questions too. So I am hoping that we can get to a few of those. It's really exciting to hear that our students are taking part in this too.
See, I forgot to start recording again. I'm going to do that now before we get to the questions here. So
okay,
let's do that. All right, there we go. Okay, so how I'd like to handle this is if you have a question, I would request that you raise your hand and I will call on you and then you can unmute yourself and ask your question. So does somebody have a question that they would like to pose to Ms. Benavides? All right, well, while people are gathering themselves and figuring out how to raise their hands and all that, I'll throw one at you from the kids here. Let's see, how about, so many choices here. How do you plan on supporting our school district, especially our specialty programs?
Oh, that's exciting. I think that one of the things you have to know about Lansing School District is every school really is a specialty program. So we have unique programs. We have Montessori. We have, which sounds like that's the question coming from Wood Creek Montessori today. We have our arts program, STEM, STEAM, environmental studies and food science. So every school really has their own specialty. So how I would support that as a superintendent is I think that every student is on a pathway, right? That's what makes the Lansing School District absolutely unique. So to support that, I would make sure that we have continued funding for those programs. And when there's asks to further those programs, we make sure that we find a way to build those into the budget. I think we have a really great school improvement process. And when principals come to those school improvement review meetings that we have every spring, they put forward their plan and their vision for their schools. And they know their students and their teachers the best. And so really just making sure whatever the vision is for that school and for our school district and to further the pathways is really how I would support our specialty programs, knowing that each and every school really has their own unique environment and theme.
Fantastic, thank you. And just a reminder, there is a link in the chat room for the survey, so I would encourage you to fill out that survey. All those survey results will go to the Board of Education. Okay, first question today. How about Tobias?
Yeah, what can you do in the position of superintendent, and would you do to mitigate the whitewashing of Common Core?
It's a great question, Tobias. Thank you for asking that. I think the first thing that we can do is the school board is really committed to conducting an equity audit. And I think that equity audit is absolutely important. It's an outside company that comes in and does an audit of all of our curriculum. the books that we're using, the teaching materials that we're teaching from, teaching practices, and it gives us feedback. And then we can use that feedback as a school district to make the adjustments that we need. I think the outside source is incredibly important because they're coming in with a lens to help us as a school district grow in the right direction. And I'm really proud of the board for coming forward with the equity audit. It's a theme that we've actually been working on in the Lansing School District for several years, but this audit is really going to give us fantastic information to act on and improve the equity for our students in the curriculum and the teaching materials that we're using.
Okay, Robert.
What, as superintendent, what would you do to boost Achieve It on state standardized tests, specifically proficiency in all subject areas in the state tests?
So in order to improve achievement, so I have real life experience with this when I was a principal at Sheridan Road. This is something that we really focused a lot on is student achievement. I think one of the most important things to do to lend itself to student achievement is to know where your students are. So what are they coming in with? What skills do they have? What are areas that we need to improve upon or strengthen for students? Are they coming in above grade level? And so we need to push and enrich our students. So we really need to take a close look of where our students are at and grow each and every student from that point. I also think that it's exceptionally important to make sure that the learning is relevant to students and that it's engaging. I mean, I think we all know that when we are in a classroom, we want to be there when things are fun, when they're exciting, when we want to come back and we feel like we have a real voice in what's happening. I think some of the skills that get overlooked, however, are skills that are not tested on standardized tests, which are soft skills, things that make adults really successful adults, like collaborating with others, talking with people, giving eye contact, being organized, getting up on time and showing up and making a commitment to be at your job, even on the days that you're feeling like you might not want to be there, right? I think everybody has those days, but that persistence and grit, I think is very important. So to answer your question, I think it's really achievement is stemmed from making the learning engaging, hearing students' voice in everyday lessons, making sure we're taking students from where they are. And something I think our Lansing School District teachers do exceptionally well is building long-lasting relationships. Because those can turn into mentorships too. I still have students reaching out to me. I had a student just a couple months ago that is now becoming a nurse. She's just finishing up her nursing program. So it's really exciting to see what our students are achieving and knowing that standardized tests, yes, are a measure of achievement, certainly, but we want our children to be successful once they graduate from high school.
Thank you. Sort of approaching things from a growth mindset. That makes a lot of sense.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Okay, how about Trini?
Hello. First, I apologize for any background noise because I do have kids at home right now that just finished their school day.
Completely understandable.
So I personally am excited to have some, Lansing-based candidates for this position. I am wondering if you can address, what you bring to the table versus someone from outside the district. I know we have a candidate who is actually from out of state. Talking to my peers, other parents, we are kind of going back and forth, someone who is Lansing, who knows the city and knows our district very well versus someone who could potentially bring in ideas from another part of the country, from a different community. Could you address that and tell us why you would be the better fit for this position, having come from Lansing?
Sure. I can imagine this would be a great debate, right? Because this is a big job to fill. I mean, it's a big responsibility to be in a school district of over 9,000 students, and parents are trusting us with their children, right? So I'm a mom of 2 kids, and I know that when my kids go to school every day, I have dreams and aspirations for them. And I want to make sure that, that they're getting the education they need to be able to do that. I think the reason that I make a good fit twofold. One is Like I said before, I live in Lansing. I'm from Lansing. My parents, grandparents, great-grandparents are from Lansing. I'm not going anywhere. So whether I become the superintendent or whether I don't, I'm still committed to the Lansing School District. I love my job as an executive director right now of innovation and improvement. So I feel for me, it's really a win-win in the fact that I will still be here. So I think one of the things that I bring to Lansing is I really feel like Lansing is my destination, right? So as a little girl, my aunt was a teacher at Dwight Rich, and I helped her put up bulletin boards and check math papers. And that was my first taste of the love of Lansing, honestly, and Lansing Public Schools. So I think for me, I honestly, in all transparency, never dreamed I would even be running for superintendent. That was never even one of the things that I thought, oh, someday that's going to be me. I think what has brought me here is really the love of our kids. Our community has been through an extensive amount of change in the last 2 years, both in our own administration in the Lansing School District, of course, COVID. And so really what perpetuated me to even apply for the superintendency is I believe that our community needs someone who is committed, not going anywhere, not looking to do something, not looking to use this as a stepping stone to something else. This is it for me. This is what I want to be doing. I also think that I'm here for kids. I want to see our children. So when I get older and retire, they're our next generation, and they're really feeding our community. Because without the Lansing School District, what is the Lansing community? And without the Lansing community, what is the Lansing School District? So I think it really goes hand in hand. I can understand a draw for looking at an outside candidate. Some people might say, oh, he might bring in something new, change, different, better, right? But I'm really committed to looking at new and innovative approaches. I really challenged a lot of the traditional approaches as a principal at Sheridan Road. We had spaces in the hallway where kids could work. Collaboration was something that we really encouraged. We wanted to hear that healthy buzz in schools. No longer is, I'm talking and you're quiet. Kids learn by talking. They need to be interacting with others. So I think the reason that I make a good fit is I'm here, I'm committed. I love this community with my entire heart and the Lansing School District. And I think that we need someone who is going to bring about some calm and some stability in the next 3 to 6 years or longer, hopefully, than that. But I think we've been through a tremendous amount of change, and we need someone who really understands the amazing things that we had going on and the areas that we have to grow. Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, Dave. Dave Brigham, are you out there? All right. Tobias, did you have another question?
Yeah.
Oh, there's Dave.
Okay, there I am. Sorry. All right. Do you want me to continue talking or?
Yes, please. Go right ahead.
Okay. My question is in regard to experiential learning. And I had a question in regard to what your vision is of the role of experiential learning in the school district in the future, and if you have any examples.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate that. I think, first of all, experiential learning is something that I did when I was a teacher. So when, for my 4th and 5th graders, we would go to Camp Ebersol every year. I think that was a wonderful experience. If those of you who are in the audience today, if you've not been a chaperone or gone to Ebersol, I highly recommend it. It is an absolute gem. I don't know of many school districts that have an environmental center. I also don't know of many school districts that have an equine center. Who would have known that an urban area could have horses and have students learn how to ride horses and care for horses? I think that experiential learning is incredibly important. First of all, it makes our textbooks come alive, right? So it gives kids an opportunity to be very curious about their environment, to ask questions, and to add experiences to their own backpack. It makes them excited to come to school every day. One of the things as a teacher that we did is we participated in a program called Annie's Nature Lesson, which is where students would go to Waldemar, Fenner, Lincoln Brick for an entire week, and we would apply science and writing and reading and all the great things that can happen right there in nature. So I think that part of Lansing is project-based learning. We did a lot of that at Sheridan Road. We had students create a project where they were entrepreneurs and they created their own products. They had to set a price and a product, a profit that they wanted to make. And I think those real life experiences help our children, first of all, become a part of the Lansing community and know what rich and beautiful things we have here. But it also helps them grow and know that learning is not in the four walls, right? We learn every day by being out in the community. You can learn something from walking down the street and just being aware of what's around you. So my vision for experiential learning in the school district is to make sure that that continues to happen, and also to make sure that we increase time in those experiences for our kids.
Okay. Tobias, did you have another question?
Yeah. What can you do to make sure that all teachers in Lansing are prepared to do culturally responsive education, especially with the high percentage of white teachers?
It's a great question. The Lansing School District, especially over the last 3 years, has really honed in on that topic. It's something that we have spent every single district-wide professional development day on this school year, talking about cultural competency. And I think that starts with our teachers, our administrators. It starts with me and understanding that we all come with our own cultural biases. We all have implicit bias. We would like to say we didn't. I certainly would be a person who would love to say, no, I have none. But I think the first thing that you have to do is really bring about an awareness and understand that cultural competence means that you're celebrating every individual by seeing them for everything that they are. And part of that is making sure that remains a focus. I know that part of the job as superintendent will be to work with the board to create the next strategic plan. And one of the things that I feel is just absolutely imperative is to make sure that exactly the question you're asking becomes a fabric of our goals for the next 5 years in that strategic plan, so it doesn't get lost, and so that we have an accountability to this community, because it's in our strategic plan to let you know after a year goes by, 2 years goes by, 6 months goes by, what strides are we making in those areas. So I think it's important first to plan it, and then also to be accountable to this community to make sure that you know that this is exceptionally important to all of us.
Okay, Courtney has a question. Courtney?
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, Courtney.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm thinking in particular about the extracurricular activities and what sort of role you think they should play in the district, and specifically thinking about the arts and humanities sort of extracurriculars, and what sort of financial support there would be, and if it will be on par with some of the sports programs that we have.
I see your piano in the background. I don't know if
Yes.
you play or not, but the arts was really important in my life growing up. My mom was a choir director, a singer. She made every single one of us learn an instrument. Some of us loved it more than others. I really did enjoy it, although I learned to play flute. And so as an adult, there's not a lot of opportunity to use that instrument as much as a piano or guitar, for example. I think the arts are incredibly important when we think about building a district that's very well-rounded. We have to make sure that those arts are included. I myself love to paint and draw. My children love to paint and draw and do things that are very creative. It's a way for some of us to decompress, some of us to get out some energy, and to kind of put our view and our creativity into the world. So in Lansing, if you've ever visited Old Town, we have some incredible galleries there. I worked with Eli Broad last summer to create an artist exhibit, and it was around how students see themselves in their culture. And they were able to create these art pieces that were then exhibited in the art gallery. So I think that part of it is we have to make sure that our funding is aligned. I know that the Lansing School District right now is a grant in the works that will be incorporating even more the arts, into our schools. We, of course, have our magnet schools like Dwight Rich School of the Arts. So if you have a child that's really passionate in that area, we have the pathway for you, so to speak. I think another way that we do that is we have wonderful partners, and we're always looking for partners. So Reach Art Studio has been an exceptional partner over the years. Eli Broad. We have a community member, Ben Hassinger, who's been teaching ukulele. There's just some really amazing things that we can bring into our schools. But I think the number one thing that we need to do is we need to be listening to our students. We need to be asking them, what are you passionate about? And that's what we bring forward in our schools. I think that students and parents can't be heard enough. We might think that we know best and we're going to put this program forward or this program forward, and it might not hit the target because we haven't gotten the input from people. So I believe that the arts are just as important as sports, and I believe it's just as important as academics in a lot of ways, because that's how children and adults like myself like to express themselves in that way. So I hope that answers your question, but I'm really passionate about it. And I think with community partnerships, there's a very low cost when you build a community to wrap around the arts. And also, I know that the Lansing School District has been committed in the past to, like I said, I oversee state and federal grants. We have $1 million grants surrounding the arts. And I know that we'll continue to go out for those types of the grants in the future.
Okay, someone in the chat asked to ask a question. That would be Jay Blasius.
Good afternoon. I'm sorry, I don't have the option to raise my hand, so that's why I had to put it in the chat. You are talking about, funding programs and that, and as you know, our REAP grant is done, but it has created some great programs here in the district. What are your thoughts as to how to keep those going?
It's funny you mentioned this because actually in our executive team meeting, the READ grant came up. We were talking about how we're going to sustain this program and starting the conversations right around this very thing you're talking about. Kim Johnson-Ray right now is part of overseeing that grant, and we are going out for a no-cost extension, which means that any of the funds that are left in the grant currently, we would be able to extend into the next school year. RIF has been an incredible part of the Lansing School District as literally as long as I can remember, back to my very first year of teaching 23 years ago. So I believe that we're committed to, part of the READ grant was giving students camp experiences. We will continue to do that with Camp Ebersol. We have an amazing director, Ben Botwinski, who is committed to making those experiences as low cost, if not free, for students. We've got a great partner in Dean to make sure that transportation is low cost, if not free, for students to do that. So I think that we have to get creative in the ways that we can utilize other grants that may have the same ideals or the same, what's the word I'm looking for? The same objectives as are the GREED grant, and be able to get creative with the funds to make sure that we can continue for that to happen. It has been a tremendous grant, so I'm glad that you found the benefit in it as well.
And I actually meant the REAP, REAP.
Oh, REAP. Thank you. REAP too. Yes. Okay. Thank you for that question too. We have the grant that I was talking about was the READ grant, and the REAP grant. Yes. I am a product of the REAP grant. Anyone, if you watch my interview, if you know about me, several years ago, I was able to be a part of the Aspiring Leader program, and that gave me probably all of the pieces that I needed to be able to even apply for this position. I was able to take a year and shadow our high schools. I was able to shadow all of our departments. So the REAP grant is another one that has been on our executive team agenda for several weeks. And we are looking for ways to utilize our Title I and Title II, Title IV grants to build that program. We're looking at ways to combine positions that we currently have to make sure that we can continue that grant forward. It's what we would consider a seed grant, which means that REAP now has planted the seed and we want to see it grow. If you know anything about the logo, it's the tree. So we are going to definitely make sure that we keep that grant going. Our human resources director has been really involved with the recruitment and retainment efforts for the Lansing School District. Our instructional coaches. I currently work with Liesl Carlson, and she's working on some pilot efforts with Geyer Park with my teaching partner. I know that our instructional coaches have been working exceptionally hard on growing that and focusing on the positivity in our classrooms and growing those practices. So I think you'll be pleased to know that we think the READ grant is exceptionally valuable, and we are looking for ways to make sure that we can sustain and grow those efforts.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you. Sorry for the confusion.
Read, it all sounds the same in Zoom. Okay, Hannah.
Good afternoon. My question is thinking about COVID-19 and watching the world as we've struggled with experiencing the scientific process firsthand. What would be your plan or approach with like this in mind to improve our students' science education?
So first and foremost, I started my career as a science teacher. I am a complete science lover, geek, if you will. And as we can see with all of this unfolding, and I love the way you said that, through COVID-19, I think the world really recognizes, if they hadn't before, just how important science is. We need science minds. We need to create students and thinkers that are going to be able to take on problems that we never knew even existed. Who would have thought that something like this would have happened in our day and age? I don't think I could have predicted this. My life depended on it, honestly. We have some very strong STEM and STEAM pathways. We have our Biotechnical Academy through Attengill and through Eastern. And I really think that the question that came about from Dave Brigham about experiential learning, I think is incredibly important to tie those two together. I think we need to bring students to be curious about the world around them, and they can learn about science in a textbook, which I'm a firm believer of. They have to have all of those foundations, but we also want to help them gain thinking skills and strategies that are going to take them above and beyond the textbook and hopefully be the people that will create vaccines. Hopefully we don't have anything like this, but if we did, I would like to think that we would be able to prepare students in that way. We've spent quite a bit of money on, we have a new science pilot coming up, or we're going to be adopting a new science series here in the next year or two. And so we as a school district are really invested in the sciences as well. I think for me, it's a way that, so I'll tell you a little truth here. In the 4th grade, I got a comment on my report card that absolutely crushed me, which was, she asks too many questions. I haven't lost that, so sorry to my 4th grade teacher, but that's not a habit I'm going to break. And I would like to think that with our students that we encourage them to ask questions, and the way that we do that is through science.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Robert, did you have another question?
Yes, I do. State what's the importance of special education in school, and how would you ensure that the Lansing School District follows the special education best practices?
That's a wonderful question. This is actually something that touches me very closely. Not every child learns the same way. I have 2 daughters. They are completely different in their learning style, and they needed accommodations in school. And those accommodations are incredibly important to students to have access to the content, and is something that I know for my daughter, when she went through Sheridan Road, that she had teachers there that made those accommodations without even having a 504 IEP plan because they took her where she was. So I think IEPs are incredibly important because it creates a partnership between parents and between the school to make sure that those accommodations are happening regularly, that we're giving you progress monitoring on where students are. that we change those accommodations. Just because a child has an accommodation in second grade doesn't mean that they're going to need that accommodation the next year. They might need something different. As part of my job as executive director, I oversee the technology department. And today we actually went live with a new system called Synergy SE. It talks to our student information system, and it will help us to really keep a very close eye on all of the IEPs that we have in the system, our 504 plans. It will help to generate progress reports so parents will know, even on a more frequent basis, how their students are doing. And I think it's really important. We've invested in special education supervisors over the years so that we can make sure that we have one over our preschool program, over our elementary program, our high school program, to make sure that those accommodations are absolutely being followed. At the end of the day, whether a student has an IEP or a 504 plan or no plan at all, in the legal sense, I think it's really important that we pay attention to making accommodations where students need it. Students have to be able to access the content, and I don't learn the same way you do, the same way someone else in this room might. And as the Lansing School District, I think our teachers do a really great job at taking students where they are and making sure that they're growing. I hope I answered all of your question. If I didn't, please chime in.
Thank you. You did. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have a question from Erica Bushy. Erica.
Yeah. And again. Hello, Ms. Benavides.
Hello.
As you know, I teach middle school students. And I happen to think if my middle school students ran the world, it would be a much better world to live in. As superintendent, how do you plan to work with students to make sure their voices and ideas are heard?
I feel exceptionally strong about students' voice. I see it in their eyes when they're excited about things. I see it in their eyes when they have built relationships with adults and they feel that they're in a safe and nurturing environment. I don't know that we can put forward enough effort to hear student voice. I think one of the things that many superintendents do when they become a superintendent is they go on a listening tour. And they have sessions with teachers and they have sessions with community members, much like we're having today. And they have sessions with parents, another very important stakeholder group. I think where some superintendents may miss the mark, though, is we need to be doing listening tours even for our youngest students. They know why they come to school every day. They know why they're excited to be there. They know what their passions are. And if we're going to build we're going to encourage really good citizenship in this country, in this world, in this state, then we need to build voices for students. Things aren't going to change if people don't speak up and say things. And so I think the sooner that we can do that with our students and honor their voice and listen. And then I think the biggest thing, though, that sometimes gets missed the mark is we ask, we listen, we hear, but then what do we do about it? Right? So we have to actually act on what we're hearing. We actually have to put things in place based on what our students are coming forward with. And I think it's really important to give our students credit where credit's due, So I think one of the things that I would do is, as a superintendent, I would definitely want to do a listening tour. I think that's incredibly important to hear from staff, parents, students in the community where we are, but students have to be an integral part of that listening and knowing where their passions are so that we can make sure that we're building pathways for adults that will be passionate about this community, give back to the community, and they will have a voice when they see something that needs to change or that they need to question. They know that is their absolute right to do so, and that people need to be listening. Our students have a lot to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. I had somebody, Terra, are you out there with a question?
I am. Good afternoon, everyone.
You have a great voice. I can't see your face, but good afternoon.
Thank you. I got a lot going on in the background right now.
It's okay.
I am a paraprofessional and I work at Everett and started at Gardner, woo woo. And my
Learning.
question is, in the face of COVID-19 and the district's previous use of substitute teachers, what are your feelings, or is there a plan to promote from within? For example, utilizing paraprofessionals in the position of long-term subs versus bringing in multiple subs daily?
It's a great question. I actually was part of a committee a couple of years ago where we were talking about how do you grow your own from inside a school district. So as you're saying, it sounds like you're very committed to Gardner and now to Everett, and you know the students as they can. Of course, we have guidelines that we have to follow. And we also want to make sure that if we have hired you as a paraprofessional, that we have students that are counting on you to do the job that you were hired to do. They're counting on you every day to be there for them. And so we certainly don't want to take away from experiences to plug in for a substitute teacher. However, I will tell you that one of the things that I really have a passion and dream and vision for the Lansing School District is to really grow our own. So if we have paraprofessionals that would like to be guest teachers in the school district, then we need to offer those opportunities, and any training or anything that might be obstacles to for that happening, to make sure that anyone in the school district that has a job or something that they would like to do, that we make sure that that can happen. I do know that the guest teachers has been a wonderful program for us, because I think what you're alluding to is the fact that our kids need consistency of adults instead of a revolving door of a new person, especially in a long-term experience. So I think exploring that option is tremendous, and I really applaud you for bringing that question forward, because it sounds like you really have a passion for students and want to see the consistency of education for them. So I think my answer would be really looking at opportunities to grow our employees into whatever they feel that they have to offer our school district, which is a lot.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, from the chat. Science has been upgraded many times since 2006. Social studies is finally getting new textbooks. What do you plan to do to support social studies?
To support social studies or science, Jay?
The question says social studies.
Okay. Well, we did just adopt, we are adopting our social studies series, and we're putting that into effect. I know that our instructional councils worked really hard on adapting this new social studies series. I think Tobias brought up a wonderful question early on in this session, which is talking about how do we make sure that those textbooks are culturally relevant to our student, and making sure that it encompasses all of our cultures. And history books, historically, no pun intended, have catered a lot to one or two dominant cultures. And so we need to make sure that through this equity audit that we have, that we're putting in place the correct supplemental materials, that we're making sure that we see history through every perspective, because history, depending how you look at it, everybody is impacted in a different way. So I think I know that our executive team, Dr. Chapman, our instructional division, is going to be putting in professional development so that we can learn more about the social studies curriculum and the textbooks, and making sure that teachers are truly prepared in the fall to make sure that we can dive in and use those materials to their fullest.
Okay, Monique.
Hello, good afternoon, Ms. Benavides.
First,
good afternoon. Let me apologize for not having my video. I'm usually more adept, but today is a rough day. But
no worries.
Couple of questions, if I may. One, I believe, Ms. Benavides, and please correct me, you are director of the Improvement and Innovation, is it called?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. And so in the event that you would become superintendent, is there a process for that position to be filled? Do you feel like there would be plausible persons to take on your exemplary role that, from hearing, you know, you've done very well in?
Well, thank you for that. Yes, first of all, yes. I know that something that I truly believe in as a leader and a department leader is making sure that we are growing absolutely every employee to know the ins and outs of each other's jobs. So what we call cross training. I think as a leader, you have, and just like a teacher, they're a leader in our classrooms every day, that we have to make sure that we're invested in growing the people around us, that we are building on their capacity, that we're building on their growth. I know that if I were to become superintendent, we absolutely have some people right here in-house that could take on that job and I think do exceptionally well. I myself would, of course, be active in any supports that they might need, any insight. I think it's really important that we all stay very connected to positions that we've had in the past. I know that as a teacher, I still wear that hat on a daily basis. I think it's one of the most important jobs that I've ever held in my entire career. So to answer your question, I think as superintendent, we absolutely have people in the Lansing School District that could step into my position and do an excellent job.
Okay, great, thank you. And one more follow-up question. Please excuse me if you answer these types of questions already, but I joined the Zoom a little bit late. In dealing with controversial issues that implore upon the topic of civil rights for a number of groups, regardless of their age, regardless of their race, if their civil rights are infringed upon, how would you, as superintendent, what do you think are certain measures, certain tasks, or certain takes that you would go through or maybe not go through in order to address things that might divide people in one city because of different viewpoints, you know?
It's a great and very timely question. I think the very first thing that we have to do, and especially in a leadership role such as the superintendent, is you have to make sure that you acknowledge that there's an issue. I think that is first and foremost in everything that we do, that we have to acknowledge, first of all, that there's an issue. We have to make sure that we have open ears and open minds to what's happening. We have to make sure that we hear people's voices. And if a decision has to be made, that we make sure that people have that chance to voice their concerns, to voice their opinions. Of course, my slant as a superintendent, or my mission as a superintendent, is going to be to make sure that this is the absolute best environment for all of our students. Hands down, number one, my very first priority. If students don't feel that they are welcome, they don't feel a sense of belonging, they don't feel that they are heard, then they are not going to want to be here and come to school every day. So I think, Monique, you asked an excellent question. I think it's important that we would do our due diligence, go through our process. And I think most importantly, we would be absolutely transparent in all of the actions that are being taken and hear people's voices throughout the process.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Jeremy.
Thank you. Miss Benavides, is that correct?
Yes, you did a great job.
Thank you. Well, I am a Lansing School District employee, and so my question is, how would you work with legislators to positively impact education issues that affect the school district? So like we have a lot of legislations that have different ideas. How would you work with the legislation, like promote this district? Yeah.
I think you have to be present. I think you have to keep on top of things. You have to be aware of what's happening. First of all, you have to take a direct interest. I know even in my office, I can see the Capitol from where I work. So it's really important that I would make sure that I'm plugged in and connected to what's happening. I know especially in the world of grants, which is a lot of my position right now, the decisions that are being made by legislators are impacting the programming and the things that we can offer our students. And so it's really important that, once again, and I know I'm kind of repeating myself, but we have to let our voices be heard. And as a superintendent, it would be, my voice is going to be probably a pretty important one because of just the position that I would hold. However, one voice is not enough to make change. So as much as I would be there and vocal and advocating for our students, making sure that I'm aware of what's happening in legislation and trying to, make my points known. I think it's just as important to make sure that students' voices are heard, that they're writing letters, that they're talking, and that, we're here in the capital city of Lansing. I mean, this is a tremendous and exceptional place to be. And I think as a community, we would need to make sure that we're wrapping around those issues and making sure that our voices are heard and that we're here for the students, making sure that they're successful and the decisions that are being made are in the best interest of our students and our community.
Thank you. Can she answer multiple questions? I have like 2 more. Or do I have to get back in line?
Yeah, I have quite a few questions in the chat that I would like to get to her. So if you want to put yourself back in the queue, we'll see where we are in a little bit here.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, let's see. How do you plan to attract and retain students? We have many potential students that are currently schools of choice. What will you do to ensure we keep the families we have and possibly bring back the students we have lost?
I think that, first of all, we have to bring awareness of all of the amazing things that the Lansing School District has to offer. I think we have to be our own best advocates. When you are at the grocery store and you are talking very positively about the things that are happening, word of mouth is a very powerful thing. I think that the Lansing School District is a little known gem for a lot of people. We have our Lansing Promise, where students have 2 years of free college that they can have once they graduate from the Lansing School District. We have CTE programs. We have pathways. We have, like I said before, our environmental center, our writing center. We have some incredible things that we do in Lansing that I just don't even know that people are completely aware of. We have an incredible communications department that I know has been working very hard. They put our presence is known on social media. But I think it's really important too that we have our community members that have graduated from Lansing schools to come back and talk to and spread the word about all the positives that they are doing and impacting. When I watched the forum last night, I heard a young lady talk about a nonprofit that she started in the Lansing area, and she was an Eastern grad, having her come back and talk about the amazing things that she experienced in the Lansing School District and the fact that she's still in the community and giving back by creating this nonprofit organization. I think the other thing is we have to make sure that parents know that education starts at a very young age. Just because school doesn't start until preschool doesn't mean that we can't make sure that parents in our area are receiving literature about developmental benchmarks for their kids. Offering opportunities to pick up books, many things that we could put in place to do that. I think the number one thing we can do though is make sure that as employees and staff of the Lansing School District, that we get the word out ourselves that we're not afraid to do that. I know that our showcase this year was a virtual showcase, that we had a lot of traffic come through. And I think the other thing is just really letting the greatness of our students shine. Our students have become senators and Rotary Club ambassadors, business owners. There are people, NBA legends, who they're all grown here in the Lansing School District. And I think if people really truly knew what was happening on a day-to-day basis, the warm, loving environment that we have student support specialists at all of our schools with a very strong focus on SEL, mental health, trauma, all of the things that touch our children in a whole and complete way. We have cutting edge technology. I think just getting the word out and making sure that we have a very strong presence in the community, and the community has a strong presence in our schools. Once people really catch on and they know that when we say dream big, we'll get you there, we actually mean that. And there are people that have accomplished tremendous things that are graduates of the Lansing School District. So that's how I would recruit and retain students in our school district.
All right. During the times of the pandemic, our students have been given the advantage of one-to-one technology. This allows our students yet another way to compete with students in other school districts. Do you see the district moving forward with one-to-one technology? How do you see this being funded?
Wonderful question. So we've been very lucky to have received CARES funds, which are COVID relief funding. And a lot of the computers that we were able to purchase to do one-to-one technology came through that CARES grant. We do have a couple series of CARES grants coming. And so the technology that our families have in their homes came from our schools and came from the purchase of technology through that grant. So one of the first things that we have to do is make sure that all of our schools are well equipped with technology on a day-to-day basis, that we have one-to-one technology in our actual school houses once we come back to face-to-face school. But I also think we need to make sure that we continue with the access for families that would maybe don't have a computer at home or don't have access to a computer or can't get to the library, that there's a system and a way to check computers out. We obviously will need to look into things like insurance plans and making sure that when devices come home, we know that things happen, that there's going to be, something accidental, something's going to break. So we need to make sure that we have a long-term plan to make sure that that's sustainable, because these CARES grants, as you know, are a one-time grant. So I've been working very closely with our Chief Financial Officer, John Lang, of course, Jeff Vanderland, our technology director. We're building that plan literally as you're asking this question today.
All right. In lieu of COVID-19, the world has not stopped. As superintendent, what is your plan to get our students caught up educationally?
So this is something that we hear a lot about. And I know that we have some students actually that have really thrived in this environment. And I don't even think that parents could believe that this would be an environment that their students would thrive in. So I think first we have to address the fact that learning loss is not going to be in its totality. As a world, we're all going to be in the same place. So I like to think that we are going to be taking, as I said before, we're going to be taking students where they are, and we're going to be incrementally increasing their achievement and their attainment of the curriculum. I do think our children have learned incredible things. I like to call them pandemic positives. So they've learned things during the pandemic that I'm not sure that they would have had the opportunity in the day-to-day to develop, such as self-management skills, making sure that you're online, making sure you're engaged, making sure that you're tuned in. And many of our students have really expanded their technology skills, and that can only help and benefit us coming here in the fall, which hopefully we will be back 100% face-to-face during that time. So I think to answer the question, it's really important that we take students where they are. We have very high expectations for our students, but we make sure that they're attainable and that we're offering support, both academic and with our social emotional supports, with a warm and welcoming environment. It's going to be a transition. I don't think that anyone will say otherwise. Our students have been away from schools this is marking now a year. And so we have our work cut out for us, but I am really encouraged by our teachers who have done an exceptional job this school year, taking on really this unknown, and our families who have taken this unknown and taken a leap with us to have their students online. And I think together we're only stronger. And so we will tackle this just like we have the pandemic.
Okay, Erica Lynn, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Hi there. Sorry, I'm gonna go. So it's very nice to meet you, Jessica. And again, I said last night, I was on last night, I really love this format. Thank you all for doing it this way. I founded a local nonprofit, the Village Lansing, and I'm a Lansing graduate, very proud Lansing graduate. I agree. I think Lansing produces some amazing people, and that is why our focus is Lansing School District students. So my question to you is, what are some tangible ways that you value, committing to partnerships with grassroots local organizations whose focus are Lansing School District students? And what are some tangible ways that you'll kind of make that a process, I guess, a little bit less barrier filled? I think sometimes we've kind of seen that, and it's just difficult. There's a lot of red tape. There's unidentified processes, things like that, in order to really get involved. And Lansing School District is kind of like that gatekeeper to all of these kids that we really want to, fill those gaps. So what are some tangible ways that you find value in that? And then what are some ways that you would bridge that gap between getting us more involved with the students?
Well, I think first of all, just your voice here today to hear that, there are some unidentified processes that we have to go through. I think that can't be the case. We have to make sure that the process is absolutely as transparent as possible. I also think that our community partnerships need to be a mutual relationship, so that as superintendent, I would want to put forward our strategic plan where we want to go with our school district over the next 5 years, and make sure that our vision is very clear to our community, and also so that they know how they can plug in then to help us and our children achieve those goals. One of the things that I said earlier was talking about having a listening tour. And I think one of the most important, well, not one of the most important, but important, because I think they're actually all equal, would be to have those roundtable discussions with community members and the vision that they see for how they can plug into the Lansing School District and really enhance what we have going on. I think that we have to be thinking about our community as an absolute whole. Like I said earlier, the Lansing School District is nothing without its community, and the community is nothing without the Lansing School District. And if we can really come with that mantra forward, I think you identified something that's critical, though, which is that we need to make those processes very transparent, very easy, and that we make sure that, at the end of the day, we're here for the success of our kids, and how better to be successful than to have partnerships across the city. Because who knows, the next Lansing grad may be starting another nonprofit, much like we have.
Thank you so much for answering this. Very nice to meet you.
Thank you. We've got time for probably one, maybe two more questions here. So Susan Wheeler.
I think she might be muted.
Yep, Susan, you need to unmute yourself.
That could be the phrase of 2020 and 21. Unmute
Yes,
yourself.
Absolutely. Who knew?
Yes, thank you. But I'm a nurse with the district, and as the global pandemic has presented such enormous challenges with health, academics, socially and emotionally to our students and staff, we know these challenges will continue next year as well. And having been present as the pandemic unfolded, I'm wondering how you see that special insider insight as an asset to you and the district as we move forward to recovery.
Thank you for that. I talked a little bit earlier when our community member asked, why you, right? Like, why would I choose you to be the next superintendent? And I think this really feeds right into that. I think Lansing, prior to the pandemic, had amazing things happening. And so I think that insider view of just knowing the amazing trajectory that we were already on gives us a starting point of where we need to be once we come back face to face. So knowing where we started, where we left off, knowing the absolute strengths of all of the staff members that we have in the school district. Not many school districts have multiple nurse team like you're talking about, Sue, and that you're a part of. Not many school districts have social workers, one in each school, and SSS to work on the social and emotional mental health. I think as a superintendent, what I would bring is that we're just not going to skip a beat. We're not going to lose a moment in time. We just can't. Our kids are too precious to lose time. And I think having been here prior to the pandemic, I know where we've been. I know where we're going to be heading. I have a tremendous relationship with the executive team, with the principals in the school district. I know many of the teachers, staff, carpenters, all the people that make this district run like clockwork. And I think knowing staff members and knowing where strengths are, where we can put some things in, knowing where there's some funding that we might need to be putting in place, I think is incredibly important moving forward. I know that we're already thinking about and have a plan in place to make sure that we do address all of the health concerns that are going to be happening. The pandemic, though we have vaccines, it's not over. And we know that the struggle is going to continue for a little while, but we have health professionals such as yourself giving tremendous advice and making sure that our environment when we bring staff and students back is going to be the safest environment possible that we can ensure for them. I think that level of comfort is going to be really exceptionally important. We have our CRPBIS, which is our culturally responsive positive behaviors and supports. That is going to be absolutely critical in the fall to make sure that our students know the expectations. We hear their voice. It's culturally relevant to who they are. So I think my insight would be that I know where we're coming from. I know the amazing trajectory that we already had going. We're not going to skip a beat coming here in the fall, and we're going to focus on what we do best, which is the success of our kids. Thank you for your question.
All right, Jessica. Last question, quick fire. Okay, so just right off the top of your head, I want to know your 3 top priorities if you get the job.
Top 3 priorities. 1, I think I just talked a little bit about it, making sure that we're getting kids back, we're addressing their needs right where they are. So, success in of our staff, success of our students, building long and lasting community relationships, and making sure that we have a focus on equity and we have cultural relevancy. And we also have a focus on supporting students with social emotional health along with our staff so that we can all find a great balance coming here into the fall.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Well, thank you everybody for coming out today. Please take some time to fill out that survey. All those responses are going to go back to the board so they will see them. I appreciate your attendance today. We will be meeting with our final candidate at 4 o'clock today, Ben Schuldiner. If you go to the Lansing Public Schools website, you can find the link for that meeting. So I will see you back here at 4 o'clock today. Please fill out the survey. I'll put it in the chat one more time here. There it is. Thank you again. See you all.
Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful afternoon.